All right, we are live. How's it going, everybody? Chuck Holton here, coming to you from Amman, Jordan. And I am actually just about to start our tour with a bunch of our intrepid viewers who have joined me over here in Jordan. And we're going to do a 2-week, 10-day tour of Jordan and Israel. And so things are getting pretty skippy over here, and I was a little worried that we might have some problems getting across the border, but so far it looks like everything's open. I want to very quickly just remind you that you can go to chuckholton.com and you can see a lot of the videos that I'm not able to show you here on YouTube for obvious reasons. And so again, if I'm speaking in euphemisms and not showing you what I'm talking about, that's why. We're just trying to make it so that we can keep doing this here on YouTube. If you are stuck somewhere with no power and you're watching, God bless you, because whoops, somebody's calling me. Somebody I don't know is calling me. Let me know where you're coming in from. We've been praying for you guys out in North Carolina and Georgia and places like that. My oldest son, is in Savannah, and they just got their power back on, thank heaven. But let's talk about the breaking news coming out of Lebanon. It is being reported in some major media outlets that the IDF Special Forces have gone into Lebanon on missions in order to begin to shape the battlefield for an upcoming general invasion of Lebanon by the IDF. Now, we need to talk a little bit about what special forces do in times like this. And so that's what I'm going to talk about first. And then we'll get to some other news about, because the IDF has been very busy over the weekend since Friday, I guess, when they took out Hassan Nasrallah now we're finding out 80 tons of bunker buster bombs dropping on his head there in the Dahia neighborhood of Beirut. Those 80 tons of bunker buster bombs took out a couple of 6-story buildings and went and got Nasrallah, who was hiding 60 feet underground, having a meeting with a bunch of other important leaders from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and some other terror groups in Lebanon, and took out all of those guys, sent them all to meet their makers. And so the Hezbollah immediately, once they announced that he had been taken out, they named a successor to his throne, I guess, after 30-something years of managing Hezbollah, taking part in all sorts of, ordering all sorts of terror attacks that have led to the elimination of a lot of people, both the United States citizens and Israeli citizens. So good riddance to him. But his successor made it something like 12 hours, and then he was taken out as well. And then once that second guy was taken out, they haven't named a third guy yet. And I imagine it's because they're calling people and saying, hey, you want to be the head of Hezbollah? And the guy's like, hey, you know what? I got other things to do, actually. I need to wash my hair tonight. So I won't have time for that. Thanks, bye. Or they're just not answering their pagers. So they don't have a new leader. There's an interim guy who is sort of managing things. And this guy gave a speech. It's the first televised speech from Hezbollah since Nasrallah was taken out. And in the speech, he said, we're fine. We're fine. Nothing happening here. We're good. And we're going to keep fighting. And we haven't been hurt at all. And, this is going to be really terrible for Israel if they try to come in here. Well, we know that he's not telling the truth simply because the number of attacks on Israel since Nasrallah was taken out have not been anywhere near what was expected if they were to do something like that. So in the case of an invasion or some sort of beginning of major hostilities between the IDF and Hezbollah, the conventional wisdom said that Israel would be seeing 5,000 to 6,000 rockets a day coming across the border into Israel. It's been more like a couple hundred. Now, that's a lot. That's about twice what we were seeing before. And it's been near constant. So as a matter of fact, some of my viewers have been sending me photographs of the interceptions overhead. One of them even showed me a picture of a house that got struck by a rocket in Sfat. Thank you very much for that. And so it is causing some damage. We haven't heard much about injuries. There have been a few, but it hasn't been near as bad as people expected. And that says one of two things. Either the campaign to take out as many launchers as possible has been largely successful to date, and or the communications between the Home Office and the people out there, some coming in right now, the communications between the HQ, which is now a smoking crater, and the ground units is severely lacking. Now, in his speech, this new guy said that his name is Sheikh Hashim something. He said that they had contingencies in place in the event that communications were cut off. And so everybody should just continue with those contingencies. But it looks like things are, Israel is still riding high on this. Now, I am also hearing from other viewers who live in northern Israel that the number of IDF troops that are amassing along the border is like nothing they've ever seen. And obviously, we don't want to give away troop strengths or dispositions or anything like that, but I think it's safe to say that there are a lot and that they are making preparations, because the IDF leadership has said as much publicly. As a matter of fact, Yoav Gallant went and spoke to the troops up there in the north and said, hey, don't listen to what the media is saying. Don't listen to what the politicians in other countries are saying. This is not going to be a limited engagement. If we go in, we're going in with everything we've got. And we are going to end this thing. So that's exciting for, I'm sure, the troops that have been basically cooling their heels up on the northern border for almost a year. I've talked to many of those guys, and all of them say, we are ready to do this. As I go out, I can't film it when I'm talking to these guys for good reasons. But I sit and talk with those guys, and these are young lieutenants, young captains, even all the way down to privates. And all of them are saying, we have learned from what we just experienced in Gaza that we can handle whatever Hezbollah's got. And what they've got is a whole lot less than they had just a few weeks ago. So they believe that going in is the best option. Now, let me go back and talk about these special forces, because like I say, this is the breaking news here. If you're just coming on with us, IDF Special Forces are reported to be on the ground in Lebanon, boots on the ground in Lebanon for the first time and in this conflict. And they are performing what is known as shaping operations on the battlefield. Now, let me explain what shaping operations are. Having participated in many of these myself as a Army Ranger back in the day, about 100 years ago. Let me explain what kinds of missions the Special Forces could be engaging in inside Lebanon right now. Number one, they're probably engaging in reconnaissance and intelligence gathering, identifying key positions, infrastructure, assets, mapping out Hezbollah bunkers, gathering in information on troop movements, supply routes. They're using maybe drones or other special surveillance methods to gather real-time intelligence so that the IDF can strike those targets in advance of a major movement into the country. So they're likely south of the Litani River. I mean, they've got to be. I'm talking about the special forces that are doing missions in there, because as far as I know, they're not staying in Lebanon right now. They're actually going in, doing a mission, coming back out. And so they're not going more than 17 miles into the Litani River. So assume that they are south of the Litani River. That's all within range of IDF artillery. And so IDF artillery relies on accurate grid coordinates of targets, and many of those targets are going to be camouflaged from the air. And so it's going to be difficult to find, fix, and finish them if you're just flying a drone over the area and looking down. So putting troops on the ground gives eyes on target for the IDF's artillery units. And as a matter of fact, these guys can also not just acquire the targets, but can designate the targets with something called a laser target designator. These are just like laser pointers, but they're infrared. They're not visible to the naked eye. And there are munitions that can be fired that can actually hone in on those things, like Hellfire missiles from helicopters or planes, things like that. So if these guys go in there and they identify a command center, a missile silo, fortified bunkers, precision airstrikes can then come in, and what happens is a helicopter flies up to the border, for example, super elevates with some Hellfire missiles and fires those off, and then the guys on the ground sit there and turn on their laser pointer and just point it at the thing that they want to go boom. And in about 60 seconds or so, that thing they're pointing at just gets vaporized. This is exactly what the United States did when we went into Afghanistan the first time in 2001. We sent a bunch of special forces in. They went in and found targets, fixed them with the laser pointers, and the Hellfires came in and finished them. It was a very, very effective way to sort of soften up the enemy's defenses in order for them to be able to come in. Okay, now let's talk about other things that these guys might be doing. They may be engaging in sabotage operations, disrupting Hezbollah's logistical and operational capabilities. That includes infrastructure like supply routes, communication nodes. These guys are likely, because all their beepers went boom and all their walkie-talkies went boom, and they don't trust cell phones, and they really don't have any other way, to communicate. They're probably actually running physical cable from one place to another at this point. And so these special forces guys could go in, find those cables and cut them and cut their communications and keep them in the dark as to what they should be doing. They can also go to key routes. So if they say, okay, the IDF is going to be coming in along this axis right here, so we want to go on the east and the west of that axis, and we want to set mines and traps and booby traps and things like that to disrupt any kind of quick reaction force from coming in to fight your forces when they end up coming across the border. That's a just standard operational procedure for these kinds of missions. The next thing that they may be doing is counter-rocket operations. Obviously, Hezbollah's still got a whole bunch of rockets and launchers. So one of the things that they are likely doing is going to suspected sites where rockets may be launched from. And because a lot of these are actually dug deep into the ground. They have silos that they have constructed into solid rock, and they have covers on the top of them that are hydraulically operated. So Hezbollah can hit a garage door opener and this thing goes boop and opens up, and they fire off their munitions and then boop, closes it back up again. So Israel might have an idea where they're coming from, but in order to be able to really take them out, they need to actually go in there and confirm that, yes, there are some silos there, there are some launchers there, and then the special forces take them out themselves, or they go in and mark the locations in one way or another, and then pow, blow them up. Okay. The other thing they could be doing is just performing direct action missions against enemy sites where there are troops. And those direct action missions could be capture kill missions, where they go in and they're looking to take out critical command posts and either capture guys so that they can glean more information from them, or just take them off the map altogether. Those are raids and ambushes. Okay, so ambushes is next. Is part of shaping the battlefield, setting up ambushes. So you know that there's this one road that the bad guys are going to have to come down if they're going to come at you when you come in with your main force. Well, the special forces go in, they go out on that route, and they emplace landmines, or they emplace some kinds of sensors or something like that, or they just lay down in a line and wait for the guys to come by, and then they light them up. So these are methods not just of safeguarding your main body of your forces, but it's also a way for them to gather intelligence for the eventual invasion. So this is textbook. All of this is textbook. I'm not giving away anything. It always cracks me up when I have non-military people who are watching my show who are sending me messages and just flaming me for giving away secrets that the military of what they're doing. Believe me, I'm not giving away any secrets. This is all stuff that you can find on the internet. This is all stuff that is in every military manual on the planet. I'm not telling you what they are doing exactly. I'm telling you the kinds of things that they are probably doing on the ground. And I'm not saying where they're doing it or how they're doing it or when they're going to do it or anything like that. So I'm not giving away any information that could tell bad people things that they don't need to know. And last but not least, there is one other type of operation that Special Forces can do in a situation like this. And I will liken it back to the invasion of Panama that I participated in 1989 and 90. We were among the very first people that parachuted into Panama in that invasion, and my Ranger unit. I parachuted into an airfield called Rio Hato, which is south of, about 70 miles south of Panama City. And when we hit the ground, I was, just packing up my chute and getting ready to move out across the airfield to my objective. And all of a sudden, I started hearing Van Halen playing over loudspeakers going, "Welcome to the jungle." I was like, what in the world is that? And what it was a special operations, psychological operations unit that had jumped in with us. And the very first thing they did was set up massive loudspeakers and start playing a soundtrack for the invasion as we were moving out. And let me tell you, I don't think I've ever been so motivated by a song in my whole life. It was like hitting the afterburners on the Rangers that were going across that airfield right there. We were ready to start dealing at that point, because when somebody lights up the LZ with Van Halen as you're jumping in, man, there's not much better than that. And so that also serves to, I'm sure it just scared the heck out of the enemy, going, what in the world? These guys bring boom boxes with them? Like, what do they think this is? And so very often those kinds of tactics can be used on the battlefield to just give your troops that much more of an edge over the enemy. You might think that that's crazy, it doesn't make sense, or it's kind of silly, but they do it. And I'm not saying they're going to do it now, but that's one thing that Special Operations Forces do in shaping the battlefield for conventional forces to come in. So there you go. Now, I wanted to go back and talk about what happened in Yemen. So first thing I want to say is that, sorry, I'm going to turn my audio off here. Turn that off. Okay. Let me just make sure, just in case. I don't want to be talking to myself here. Some people are talking about the iron beam weapon. No. Oh, would that be Guns N' Roses? Sorry. I thought it was Van Halen. No, they didn't play it necessarily just to fire us up, although it did. They played it to freak out the enemy. And somebody mentioned there, yes, that's right. That goes back at least to playing stuff over loudspeakers to Vietnam, but playing music on the battlefield goes back way, way, way before that. And so, all right, so let's see here. Right. Tactical barrage is helping people out, answer people's questions. So thank you for doing that. I'm just looking at people's questions here. How far does the IDF need to travel until they reach Hezbollah with their tanks and troops? Couple hundred yards is about as far as they need to go, because if they're right on the northern border of Lebanon, I'm sorry, of Israel, and they cross the border into Lebanon, I've been on that border and you can see Hezbollah positions on the top of the hills and places like that. So it's literally just a few hundred yards. They don't have to go too far. Is laser fire a new kind of weapon? They are working on a laser beam weapon that shoots down incoming munitions, but that's not what I'm talking about by lasing a target. What I mean by lasing a target is using an infrared laser, which is not harmful, but it paints a light beam onto the target and directs a munition that sees that beam and follows the beam down to the target to strike the target. And those have been around for decades now, so that's nothing new. You heard they were already in the tunnels, Badger Girl forgot. Yes, that's what they're saying. They're saying that these IDF Special Forces are going into the tunnels and are clearing the tunnels. Now, that has not been confirmed by the IDF, but that is being reported by the Wall Street Journal and the New York Crimes and others. Do you think that Syria will get involved in this war or be used as an operation staging area? Staging area, maybe. Syrian army, no. The Syrian army can barely hold what they've got. They don't have an expeditionary army, and getting troops all the way over into Lebanon is probably a bridge too far for them. Syria has become a place for about 120,000, according to reports, refugees from Lebanon to flee to. So this is kind of unprecedented. We have thousands of refugees leaving Lebanon now and going into war-torn Syria. And you know, if you have to be taking refuge in Syria, things are really, really bad where you live. There's no question about that. Okay, let's move on to what's happening down in the south in Yemen. So first of all, I want to say that the Houthis in Yemen have been really making a nuisance of themselves, continuing to, so much so that it's almost not even news anymore, because it's just, Tuesday when they shoot a dozen anti-ship missiles or something like that at shipping out in the Gulf of Aden, the Red Sea. The United States Navy and other navies like the United Kingdom and stuff have been, they have taken on the task of putting a stop to this aggression from the Houthis on the shipping in that sea. They have failed miserably. They've barely been able to keep their own ships from getting blown up, much less, and they've completely failed at getting other cargo ships from being blown up, which is their primary mission. Yesterday, the Houthis fired like a dozen drones and missiles and stuff at U.S. naval ships in the region, and they were all shot down. So none of our ships were struck, thank God. But in retaliation, the United States did nothing. They did nothing. In retaliation, the United States they shot down all the incoming, and then they said, "Phew, boy, that was good. Boy, I hope that doesn't happen again." And they didn't do anything. Now, the same day, the Houthis fired one ballistic missile at Israel. Now, it was shot down by an Arrow missile system, anti-missile system, before it got into Israeli airspace. But Israel is pretty much done playing at this point. And so they went down with a whole bunch of airplanes, mid-air refuel. This is 1,800 kilometers. That's important. Keep that in mind. They flew all the way down there with a whole bunch of planes, at least 10 waves of aircraft, and they absolutely crushed the port at Hodeidah and was it Ras Isa, I think is the other one, or Ran Isa, something like that. The two main ports in Yemen. Absolutely crushed those ports, and they've already done that once. This is a second time. This time they took them out like for real, and this sort of, as they say, fool around and find out on the part of the Houthis. They took those out because there's not, number one, there's not a lot else to shoot at in Yemen. Like I've always said, Yemen is a giant dirt parking lot with a bunch of camels and 7th century cavemen that are, down there. It's not what you would call a garden spot, and it's not full of, important buildings that they could take out or anything like that. There have been about something like, I want to say 9 million total, about 4 million recently, 4 million refugees, both internally and externally displaced inside Yemen due to the fighting between the Houthis and the legitimate government of Yemen, who is now no longer in charge of the country. The IDF went in and blew up something that would actually hurt the Houthis, and that is they took out their ability to get fuel that they will use. Fuel is what they need to continue their aggression against Israel and the Western shipping. Now, the United States, it never occurred to them to do that because here's the thing, it's not proportional. It's not a proportional response. This response is not disproportional on purpose because you have to hurt them. So the Houthis fire a couple missiles, they get shot down, doesn't do anything to us. So the United States says, proportional response, they didn't do anything to us. They just spent a bunch of our money. They spent millions and millions of taxpayer dollars that we had to expend to shoot all these down, but they didn't actually damage anything. So we're not going to do anything in response. That is a way to ensure that they will continue doing what they're doing until they do hurt you. So a disproportionate response is the only response that will make a difference, that will work. And that's what the Israelis did because the Israelis are done playing around. So they went down and caused, I'm going to put up the video on chuckholton.com. Good grief. This was one of the most magnificent explosions I've ever seen. I mean, it is just an absolute pillar of fire. It looks like Sodom and Gomorrah going up. And in many ways, it kind of is. I mean, it's like the wrath of God came. Like if you imagine the stories in the Bible where the wrath of God came down and devoured entire cities, that's what it looks like in Hodeidah today. Absolute devastation down there. Now, the Houthis are saying, that didn't hurt us so bad. Our camels can still function without oil. And so they're saying they're going to continue doing what they're doing. But Israel is definitely stepping up the response at this point. And you know what they're doing? They're making the United States look weak because the U.S., with all of its firepower, with all of its military might, we just sit back and we go pew, pew, pew and shoot down the stuff they shoot at us, and we don't do anything to stop it. We're just blocking their punches. And this little army, the IDF, says, no, we'll take care of that. Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll take care of it. Now, I have to wonder, just as an aside, if Benjamin Netanyahu has decided to order these strikes and to start really going hard against their enemies because the elections are coming up in the United States in 30 days. And that the more he can show how feckless the United States foreign policy has been, the better the chances are that they will get a president in the United States after this next election who will actually support Israel, not just in word, but also in deed. That you have to wonder if that's the case. Okay. So there are a couple more questions that just came in. Maybe we can love these people till they stop. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. And that's not the job of the government. That's the job of you and me, but that's not the job of the government to go give people hugs. What is a proportional response to pirates? Fire at their ships? Yeah, it is weird. Yeah, that's right. A proportional response is exactly what the United States is doing. The U.S. is saying, well, they didn't actually hit any of our ships. They didn't cause any damage. Therefore, we're not going to do much against them. We might blow up an empty warehouse somewhere or something like that. But they've shown throughout this conflict, the United States is not willing. They're certainly capable, but they're not willing to absolutely put a stop to the problem. Now, there are ways that the United States could do it without actually getting terribly involved, like sending in troops or, really going hard against the Houthis. All we would have to do is send in special forces that would support the legitimate government of Yemen and help them retake their country. Let the Yemenis do the fighting for for us and for the rest of the world to retake their own country. And all we would have to do is just give them some support. And we could even hire contractors, as Eric Prince has suggested, to do a lot of the training and that sort of thing with the legitimate forces of Yemen. So that would be one way they could do it, but they're not. The ones they call ODD usually beat the odds. Okay. Oh, shoot. Why does Israel have to do the job the U.S. should be doing to the Houthis to keep shipping clear? So it's not that the U.S. is afraid. I think it's that the U.S. is just, the current administration is just feckless. They adhere to this. They believe in this policy of a proportional response. And so back to the north now, the United States and the UK and others have been calling for a 21-day ceasefire between the Hezbollah and the IDF. And they're saying, we need a 21-day ceasefire. Well, believe me, if they get a 21-day ceasefire, that's going to be it for this conflict. The IDF will lose their momentum, and they will end up probably never going into Lebanon. And the U.S. knows it. The U.S. is just doing what they can to try to convince the IDF to put a 21-day halt on their operations, in which case they will never they'll never have the momentum again to go in and actually finish the job. What do you think think about it. What do you think a 21-day ceasefire would do? Who would it help more? Would it help the Hezbollah or would it help the IDF? It would help Hezbollah. It would give them a chance to lick their wounds, get some communications reestablished, send out carrier pigeons or couriers or something to get the word out to their guys, prepare a whole bunch more rockets, and then boom, they would be able to attack Israel much more forcefully. What's in it for Israel to wait 21 days? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So Yoav Gallant was telling the soldiers on the border, hey, don't listen to what you're hearing in the news about this ceasefire. We're not doing a ceasefire. We're going to go and we're going to get this accomplished. We're going to get this done. They would be absolutely crazy to agree to a ceasefire right now. You don't agree to a ceasefire when you've got your enemy running away, when they are being routed. When they're routed, you go in and finish them off. So it would be nuts if that were to happen. Now, of course, the Pope in Rome, when he was told about the attack on Hassan Nasrallah, he was showing their pictures of him covering his eyes like, oh, I just can't believe they did that. I can't believe that they bombed Hassan Nasrallah. That's just terrible. Thank you, Lycia. And he said that was not a proportional response, and a disproportionate response is immoral. That was what the Pope said. Now, I don't expect the Pope to understand military tactics and strategy. Who would, right? That's not his job. That's not his gig, right? But give me a break. A proportionate response is a surefire way to win, to lose the war. A proportionate response is a surefire way to get forever conflict until you run out of money. Right now, the Israelis are on the cusp of completely changing the dynamics in the Middle East. If they can rout Hezbollah and get rid of Hezbollah, or at least make them weak enough so that the Lebanese army can actually stand up to Hezbollah and kick them out, then the Lebanese army and the true government of Lebanon can actually take control once again. They could actually make Israel. You understand that? You know that Iran right now is in such bad shape. We've not heard much out of them at all. They just had another helicopter go down in Iran with a bunch of high-level IRGC and Houthi people on it, killing a whole bunch more of their commanders. These guys have really bad luck with their helicopters. I tell you what, if I was a government official in Iran and they said, hey, we got a helicopter to take you where you're going next, I'd be like, I'll walk. Thanks, it's okay. It's 50 miles. Yep, yeah, I'll walk. I'll have a better chance of getting there. I wouldn't be jumping on a helicopter in Iran anytime soon. But again, I've mentioned this before on previous lives that when I was just in Armenia talking to Iranian citizens who fled Iran into Armenia, they're all telling me Israel has much less to worry about from Iran than they think they do, because Iran is, I completely agree with you, Lycia. The Pope is a liberal whack job. I can't believe I would even ever have thought this, but I actually wonder if the Pope will actually end up in heaven. In all seriousness. And if you're Catholic, I apologize for that. But when I read my Bible and I read what the Pope says, those two things don't match. Those two guys don't match, right? Thank you, Kay. I certainly appreciate that. I was now I lost my train of thought. The Iranians are apparently much weaker than everybody thought. And they've just lost two of their main proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas. I mean, neither of those is completely out yet, but they are basically on their way out. And so it's highly likely that Iran, you wonder, I mean, why hasn't Iran gotten involved here? They've spent decades and billions of dollars that could have gone to helping their people to build up these two proxies, and boom, inside of a year, they're both just done. Shoot, in the last 3 weeks, Hezbollah has just been just decimated. And now that was what the Iranians were counting on. They were counting on Hezbollah to be a counterweight to keep the Israelis from striking directly at the Iranian nuclear program and taking out their nuclear program. Now, what's to stop Israel from doing that? I'll answer that question. The United States. Unfortunately, under the Harris administration, the United States has in many ways become yet another proxy of Iran against Israel. And if it wasn't for the United States advocating against it, Israel probably would have already struck directly at Iran and would have taken out a whole lot more of their economy, their already struggling economy. To make that point, Netanyahu came out after this strike on Hodeidah in Yemen and said, hey, I'm just going to say this, that the port of Hodeidah is 1,800 kilometers from Israel. And the major oil facilities that Iran has are only 1,600 kilometers from Israel. Just saying. Just saying. I mean, it was a barely veiled threat. And what we went on to say is, we can strike anywhere. Anyone who hurts us, we will hurt them. And I think Iran is getting the message, because if there's one thing Iran cannot handle right now, it's having all of their oil revenues taken away by a bunch of, 2,000-pound munitions, tubular complaints, as we call them, that are dropped from an F-35. This is pretty serious for Iran. And so Iran has been paying a lot of lip service to Hezbollah and the Houthis and everybody, but in reality, they're not doing a whole lot right now. Now, I put one other thing I wanted to point out is that I put on my, look, folks, we got 3,600 people online. I only see 964 likes. So if you like what you're hearing, if you like this kind of commentary that explains these things in detail to you, please go hit the like button. Doesn't take long. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't hurt. It's healthy. It works out your finger muscles. Just go hit that like button. And that helps tell YouTube that more people need to see this content. That has been very, very helpful to us in doing this. Okay, somebody's asking the same question 900 times, so let me see if I can answer it. Is there any kind of realistic threat of some kind of nuclear weapon deployed against Israel? No. Next question. People thought I was crazy since I've been in hermit mode since 2000. Not for this. Anyone else think the UN could also be thought of as a proxy for Iran? Oh, no question, Danny Sanchez. No question that the UN is yet another proxy of Iran right now. And if you haven't heard the excerpt of the speech that Netanyahu gave to that body this, what was it, Friday? I put it up on chuckholton.com. Go watch it. It is astounding. It is powerful. So on that note, just while I have you, I have been making a series of videos about how to survive the chaos that may occur after this coming election. I think we all know, any American right now looks at what's going on in the United States and says this is going to be one of the most contentious elections in U.S. history. And either way it goes, there's a very strong possibility that we could see a localized or even generalized loss of civility for at least a time after the election. And so I'm putting out a series of videos, not just one because there's too much to get into, about how to safeguard you and your family against that kind of failure of civility if that comes to your town. And it's been extremely popular. The first installment of that video that I put out several days ago has had almost 200,000 views already, and even more over on chuckholton.com, where the full version of it is. I had so many notes that I was using to put together these videos that I put them into a document, and then put that document and realized I've got half a book here. I mean, this is a booklet that people could actually make use of. And so I formatted it like a book, and I output it as a PDF that's printable. And it's, I think, 10,000 words. So what's that? Nearly 100 pages. And so I put it up on chuckholton.com, but it's there for supporters only. You can go to chuckholton.com, which is locals, my locals page, and you can become a subscriber for free, but you have to sign in, but you have to be a supporter, a paying supporter, in order to get that PDF and the next one that I'll talk about next. And that's just because I put a lot of work into it. And there's a lot of value there. This is eventually going to become an actual printed book, but you get a sneak peek of this if you want it by dropping me $7 for a cup of coffee over at locals.com. So become a supporter over there. You get access to a lot of content like that. And you know what? I was saying the other day, if you're too poor and you really, really need that content, just send me an email, hotzoneholton@gmail.com. I'm not going to withhold it from you because you don't have $7. But if you want to support what I'm doing, you can, it would mean a lot to me if you'd become a supporter over there. That's kind of like my insurance policy against getting demonetized over on YouTube. So in the second installment of that video, what I did was continued the thought process and took a bunch of notes that I've been working on, actually going all the way back to 2012, about forming crisis intervention teams at churches all around the country, because the church is supposed to be the beacon of light in the darkness. And when people are having their worst day because their house just got flooded or burned down or what have you, blown away by a hurricane or burned down by Antifa, I don't care. That is the time when the church should shine the brightest. But many times the church has nothing to offer because, we don't have electricity either. And so our power's out, so we can't help you. And that should not be. So I put together a manual called the GRACE Project. GRACE is an acronym because I was in the military. I like acronyms. And it stands for Getting Ready Ahead of Catastrophic Events. And it's just forming a team at your church to prepare to be salt and light in your community in times of crisis. And I put together a very comprehensive booklet on how to do that, with checklists and all sorts of explanations and websites and apps that you can get to help you do so. And I put it all together. Again, I formatted it as a book. This one came out to be like 120 pages because like I said, I've been working on this since 2012. And it's going to be a book as well. And so I put it into a PDF form. I put that up on chuckholton.com, and you can get that as well if you are a paying supporter. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's go on and go back to what we're talking about here with the IDF. Now, they are fighting a multi-front war right now. They still have troops in Gaza. They are massing huge number of troops on the northern border, getting ready to go into Lebanon, and that's going to be a fight. That's going to be a major fight. They are working on the West Bank and Judea and Samaria. There's still a lot of violence going in there. They are dealing with the Houthis down in the south. What's that? 5, and they are also striking Iranian-backed militias in Syria and in Iraq. Now, I wanted to point out a couple of things. First of all, there are some rumors that when Israel goes into Lebanon, they may also go into Syria on a very limited basis. Now, I don't, I'm telling you right now, straight away up front, that is a rumor. The IDF spokespeople have not said anything about that. So we don't know for a fact that they're going to do that. But that is a possibility because those Iranian-backed militias have also been being supplied with munitions and things like that that could harm the Golan Heights especially. And so there's a chance that they might go in there. At the very least, they're going to continue to strike that area. What they've basically done at this point is they've formed an actual blockade of the eastern border of Lebanon, And it's an air blockade, but it's a blockade nonetheless. And they are very carefully monitoring the traffic that is coming from outside of Lebanon into Lebanon right now. And they're doing that so that they can take out any munitions shipments that may be coming in from Iran. Twice that I know of in the past couple of days, the IDF has made phone calls to the airport in Beirut and said, hey, you know those airplanes that are on their way in right now? Well, guess what? Those airplanes that are headed from Iraq and from Iran coming into Beirut airport, if they land, if you give them permission to land, those airplanes are going to become smoking funeral pyres. And so then they say, have a nice day, and hang up. And the next thing that happens is those airplanes turn around in the air and go right back where they came from. So that air blockade is something that's not being talked about a lot in the mainstream media, but it is happening. And that is going to be very necessary if the IDF is going to go in and clean out all those rat-infested holes in southern Lebanon. They're going to need to make sure that there's nobody resupplying them with more rats. And so that's what they're working on right now. Does that make sense? Now, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please go subscribe. We've gotten a few new members already during this live, and we should have a lot more than that because only about half of you guys that ever watch these things are subscribed. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't cost anything for you to hit the subscribe button. But again, it tells YouTube that more people need to see this content, and that's the way that the channel will grow. And so if you want to help us, that's a free way you can do it. I appreciate it if you will. Now, how will the IDF deal with an entire area that's booby-trapped? Well, this is going to be dangerous. There's no question. And without a doubt, Hezbollah has been putting in lots and lots of booby traps all over southern Lebanon at this point. There are going to be booby-trapped houses. There are going to be ambushes. And that may be part of what the special forces of the IDF are doing right now as they go into Lebanon ahead of this, this invasion that's about to happen. That's very, very likely. So it is highly likely that within a few days, we are going to see a, not limited, but I mean, you could make a case that any ground invasion is going to be limited because Israel doesn't have unlimited assets at its disposal. But they're going to go in with as much force as they feel like they need to go in with in order to put an end to this as soon as possible and allow their people who have been out of their homes in the north for a long, long time to finally be able to go back home. You should expect to see very large barrages of rockets and other tubular complaints flying out of Lebanon into Israel over the next couple of weeks because Hezbollah is not out of those at all. But every rocket that flies makes it that much more likely that the IDF has to go in on the ground. And right now, it's not even it's a foregone conclusion at this point. It's going to happen. Okay, maybe think about offering book for free to supporters when it comes out to get more supports. Well, that's what I'm doing. If you're a supporter, you can get it for free right now. And all you have to do is just become a supporter over at chuckholton.com, and you can get those things. I've worked a lot. I spent hours on it today, getting it all formatted, putting it all in place, and putting it up in a printable format so that you can use it. And if you get it, you're welcome to print it out. You're welcome to share it with people you think need it. Send it to your pastor. Send it to your church. This is, in my opinion, the true men's ministry, is being ready in a time of crisis. What do you have in PDF on your website? Had someone grabbing my attention when you were talking about it. So I've put up 2 PDFs now about how to help you and your family survive the chaos that may ensue after this coming election. And there's more to come. Trust me, there's more to come on that. I'll be doing several more about those. Okay. All right. So that's all I've got today. If you have any more questions, go ahead and ask them now. Let's see. Did you watch Amir Tsarfati on Pastor Jack Hibbs about the beginning and the end, talking about updates on Israel? No, I did not watch that. Several people sent it to me. Folks, I have so many people sending me things. If you're one of those people and you know who you are, who is sending me links to almost everything that you watch on YouTube, you don't need to do that. I'm monitoring all this stuff. I've got a lot of great channels, and I do appreciate messages from you if you're in Israel, if you're on the ground, if you've got, actual hard info that can help me understand the battlefield better. But sending me a link to every YouTube video you watch on all sorts of subjects isn't necessary. I mean, I appreciate you. I do. But you don't need to do that. And I'm just deleting your email. I'm not going and watching all this stuff. I just don't have time, especially if you're sending me, hey, check out this hour-long video on why the Israelis are descended from aliens and are using genies to attack Hezbollah. As a matter of fact, that's one that got sent to me, and I posted it over at chuckholton.com because it was just so ridiculous. But this is actually a thing. In the Islamic world, there are Islamic imams who are saying this now. They're saying the only way that Israel could have had such success and taken out all of our fighters with their pagers and known where Hassan Nasrallah was and reached him and known how to blow him up, the only way they could have done that is if they were descended from aliens and they're employing genies, jinn, to help them win. And to that I say, if that's the case, you should surrender. If the Israelis are descended from aliens and they have that kind of power to use magical genies to take you out, surrender now, because you can't win against that. It's just crazy. It's ridiculous. So, all right, that's all I've got for today, folks. There's a whole lot more that is, if you want to see that article, go to chuckholton.com. It's up there for free. You can see it. And hey, I try to bring you all the best news. And that's the kind of stuff you're going to get from me. Okay. All right. We've got a bunch of our viewers here that are showing up tonight in Jordan. So pray for us as we are traveling around Jordan for the next few days. If you don't hear from us, it's because I'm busy trying to corral 54 cats onto a bus and off a bus and back onto the bus. So we're going to have a great time here on this tour. And we appreciate all of you and certainly appreciate everybody who has done what we're asking, supporting, liking, subscribing to the channel, that sort of thing. Eric Stackelbeck said they hit the Houthis' power grid. Yeah, they did that as well. But, bombing the Houthis back to the Stone Age is not much of a stretch, if you know what I mean. The Houthis are not far from the Stone Age to begin with. So, taking out their power grid, not that big of a deal for the Houthis. I hate to say that, but it's pretty much true. All right. So I love you too, April. God bless you. And we'll see you guys the next time. Take care.